ALVS. This stands for audio, lighting, video, environment, and stabilization. If you can sort out these 5 things, then your video conference is going to look super professional and you will feel more confident when you are presenting online. So I'm going to share details on all of these 5 elements, and there's even going to be a bonus tip at the end, which is going to be another S actually. This live stream today is brought to you by my free video call challenge. No, rather by my free video conference. This is a live stream. We can mess up sometimes, but this also happens on a Zoom call, of course. So this live stream is brought to you by my video call confidence challenge. It's a 3-day free challenge that is going to go live on November 2nd. We're going to do 3 valuable sessions where we will dive deep into each of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. Sign up now at markuspresents.com/challenge. So we're going to move over to our tips here. And the first one on the list, as you saw, was audio. So we're going to start with audio. And in fact, the list of tips here, this is in order of importance. So audio is more important than lighting. Lighting is more important than video, and so forth. So let's talk about audio first. It is at the top of the list because it is such a big requirement for you to even have a conversation. If the audio doesn't work, then it doesn't really matter what the other things are doing. Audio is still a big challenge, and the biggest solution or the biggest tip that I can give you for audio in video conferencing is to bring your microphone closer to your mouth. This is the reason why most laptop microphones are not great for video conferencing, because you're very far away from your mouth. You can see here that my setup, for example, I have my microphone something like that distance away from my mouth, and this is the correct distance for this type of microphone. So if you only remember one thing from this whole training, bring your microphone closer to your mouth. That would be my recommendation. And there are many ways that you can do it. One of them could be a headset that you wear on your head. Then your microphone is going to be the right distance. You could also use an external microphone like I'm doing here. Or you could also use something else. And I have something here in front of me, and this is a conference speakerphone. So this has USB and Bluetooth, and you can connect it to your system. And this kind of device, by the way, there's a link to it in the video description below. But this kind of device is an exception to what I was saying before. This doesn't have to be very close to your mouth. This can actually pick up your voice from a couple of meters distance. So the real lesson here is to make sure that you're using the microphone in the correct way. Conference speakerphone can be a little bit further away, but most microphones should be closer to your mouth. And if you can just upgrade one thing, I always recommend start with the audio. Look at me trying to look professional here by having my hair fall on my face, but this is the reality in live stream. I mentioned, by the way, that there's a link to that conference speakerphone. Actually, there's links to everything in the description below the video, and you can access it by clicking Show More under the video description on a computer, and on a phone, you just have to click the down arrow. Let's move over to the next step. This is the second step. This is the lighting. Even if you have a bad camera, you can look so much more professional just by having good lighting. So what does good lighting mean specifically? Well, most importantly, it means that it is in front of you. If you only remember one thing about lighting, make sure that the light is in front of you. So many video conferences today, they look like garbage because people have a lamp of some kind behind them. There's 2 different scenarios, or even 3 maybe. You could have an overhead lamp that is the brightest object in the frame. And because it's the brightest object in the frame, that is what people are going to be drawn to. You could also have a lamp to the side, which will cause the same problem. Or you could have a window behind you. And if you have a window behind you, and if it's daylight, that will definitely be the brightest object in the frame. So don't have anything like that behind you. So have all the lights in front of you. So what does that mean? Means specifically for me? Well, I have a little slide for you. This is my video conferencing setup. This is where I'm standing right here at my standing desk. So straight in front of me is a big window, and you can even see it a little bit. If I go back to this view here, you can actually, you can't see it at the moment, but there is a big window in front of me, and then I have a LED light on a light stand here to my right. And this is a pretty good lighting setup because I have all the lights in front of me. If we zoom in a little bit, this is actually how my setup looks like. So I have my Canon M50, which is a real camera, on a tripod behind my monitor. And then I have my light to my right side here, and then the big window there. So have your light in front of you. That is the most important aspect of improving your lighting situation. Do you remember what the next step was? We talked about audio, we talked about lighting. The next step is going to be video. And video is only the third item here, because even if you have a cheap camera, if you have your built-in webcam, for example, in your laptop, so long as you can sort out audio and lighting, you will be okay. But video is, of course, an important part of video conferencing as well. And rather than recommending a camera to you, the tip I'm going to share with you is make sure that your camera is at eye level. That one thing combined with good lighting is going to be the one thing that is going to set you apart. Make sure that your camera is at eye level. That's what I'm doing now. For example, I have my camera right here in front of me, and it is at eye level, and it makes you look natural. So if you're using the built-in webcam in your laptop, you can just put it on a higher surface. So on the top of your table, if you're sitting down, just put a little stool or a box or something like that to raise your camera to eye level. That is the one power tip that is gonna make such a big difference. If you do want to look at other camera alternatives, there are many choices. Actually, let me know in the chat what kind of camera are you using for your video conferencing setup. I mentioned that I'm using the Canon M50. That's what I have right in front of me. And with a real camera like this, you can connect it with a USB cable and turn it into a webcam. With a $10 USB cable, you can have a great looking webcam out of your camera. But let me know, do you use an external webcam? Do you use the built-in laptop microphone? Do you use a real camera? Do you use something else? Maybe using a video conferencing setup like a meeting owl or the OBS Studio or something like that. I have one more power tip for you about video. So the point there is that before you go and buy a new camera, just make sure that you're using the one you have correctly by improving lighting and positioning. But speaking of positioning, I want to highlight another thing for you, and that is how you frame yourself in when you're video conferencing. If you look at how I'm framed at the moment, you will see that the top of my head is not in frame. And you will see that my eye level is approximately 1/4 to 1/3 away from the top. And this makes it look natural. Here's another mistake that a lot of people do. They think that they should have their head in the middle of the frame, but it doesn't look natural. Let me demonstrate. I'm just going to raise up my camera a little bit, and I'm going to create a view that you often see in video conferences. You will see how awkward it looks. There we go. So now I'm positioning my camera in a way that there's approximately the same amount of space above my head and below my chin as well. And this is how many people do their video conferencing, but it looks super unnatural. Let me demonstrate that by going back to my original setup here, like this, when I have my eye line approximately 1/3 away from the top. So for your video, improve your video by framing yourself correctly, and you will just impress people with just that one thing. I'm going to move over to the next tip here. But if you've been getting value so far, hit the like button. Give me a big like if you're getting value from these tips. The next tip is going to be the environment. And as I said, these are in the order of importance. So if you have sorted out your audio, lighting, and video, you are in a better position than most people. But let's talk about the environment here a little bit. And when I say environment, I mean specifically two different things. One is the kind of background. What do you have behind you and around you that that could add or detract from your message? And the second part is the audio environment. What kind of sound environment are you in? Are there any background sounds that are there? And some people spend too much time on this part, especially the background part. If you look at what I have behind me, I have a bookcase. On top of that bookcase, you can't really see it because of the way it's focused, but there's two teddy bears in that bookcase. This is not a part of a professional video conferencing setup, but that's kind of what I have in my space, and I think it adds a little bit of character. So what you have behind you, nobody's actually going to care too much, so long as it's not distracting. I don't think my teddy bears are distracting anybody. And what could those distracting things be? Of course, you could have children playing around that could be distracting. You could have animals, but in my experience, I've never been bothered by a dog joining a video conference. Let them play. But like a light behind you is an example of something that would be distracting in your environment. And then we have the audio environment in terms of the background noises. Zoom actually has really, really good noise suppression built in. I'm using a noise suppression filter at the moment. For example, I'm doing this through OBS. So that, and I have a lot of traffic just outside my window here. There are trams, there's cars. There's actually a highway just a few meters away from me. But software-based noise suppression can take care of that. So in Zoom, for example, just to have your noise suppression on automatic. I'm going to quickly demonstrate this for you by going into my filters here in OBS, and I'm going to quickly switch off the noise suppression. This is now a sample where the noise suppression is turned off. And what I believe is going to happen is that you will hear a little bit of echo and maybe a little bit of traffic noise as well. Now I'm going to switch it back on. And now we're back to our normal selves again with noise suppression. So the environment around you, don't worry about it too much, so long as there is nothing extremely distracting in that environment. The next point on our list, maybe you remember that we had 5 points. Do you remember the next one? The abbreviation is ALVS, right? I'm going to do this 5th point. And after that, I'm going to do a bonus tip for you as well. So this, the 5th point on this list is stabilization. And what I mean by this is that you should have your camera on some kind of stable surface. And the reason why this is at the bottom of the list is because it's not really a problem in practice, because most people will have a laptop on a table, and the table is not going to move around. But stabilization is important, and you will see how important it is when it doesn't work. So for example, when you see that somebody is holding their laptop on their lap, you will see it shake around. And the cool thing about stabilization is that when you're looking at yourself and you have your laptop on your lap, you will not going to notice those movements as much as the other people in your video conference are going to notice it. So do it for them. Keep your laptop or whichever device you're using on a stable surface. The other example of stabilization or lack of stabilization is when people are joining a video conference with their cell phone, and they might hold it in their hand. And that is just not a good experience. Just put your phone on a phone tripod, for example, and that's going to be a lot better than holding the phone in your hand. So not a huge problem in practice, but when it doesn't work, you can really notice it. And by the way, if you want to see some of the gear that I use for my video conferencing setup, I actually have a link in the video description to all the gear that I use, including a phone tripod. And the short link is markuspresents.com/gear. We're going to do a bonus tip. We're going to do that bonus tip in just a moment. But let's do 2 things before that. The full list of the 5 things that you need to look professional on a Zoom call are audio, lighting, video, environment, and stabilization. Remember the acronym ALVS before we go into the bonus tip. And like I said, today's session is brought to you by my video call confidence challenge. Sign up at markuspresents.com/challenge. This is going to be a free 3-day challenge with me, where we're going to do live sessions. Each of these days is going to be November 2nd to November 4th. So we're going to do a session on November 2nd, November 3rd, and November 4th, really diving deep into many of the things that we've been talking about today But it's not only going to be me sharing these tips. I'm also going to demonstrate some of the things. So the reason why I have my conference speakerphone here with me, for example, is that when we do the challenge, I'm going to do live demonstrations of some of these tips, so you can see what is the difference between a headset, for example, and a conference microphone like this. But that's actually not it. We're also going to do some super interactive things. I don't want to give it away, but you will be able to get basically individual and live feedback if you want on your setup. It's going to be super fun. So just join up at markuspresents.com/challenge, and it's completely free for the 2nd to 4th of November. There's a link to that in the description as well. Let's do that bonus tip. By the way, here's the site that I mentioned, markuspresents.com/gear, where all the gear that I use is listed there. The bonus tip that I want to share with you today is this: don't bore your audience with slides. The other tips that we talked about here is basically how to set up your video conferencing setup. But if you are then boring when you're presenting, and especially if you're boring people with slides, then your setup doesn't really matter. So I really want to encourage you to not be boring and use slides. So what does that mean specifically? Well, one thing that I think is super powerful, you see how I'm actually moving these slides around. So when I'm talking about the slide, let's say that I'm going to demonstrate this. So let's say that I'm talking about this slide here, where I'm talking about my camera setup. So I can say that there's my Canon M50 there above my monitor, and then I have my window, and then I have the LED light. As soon as I'm done talking about that slide, then I'm removing it. And the reason why I remove it is that it is so boring to look at a 45-minute presentation on a Zoom call when somebody's just sharing slides all the time. So don't bore people with your slides. Remove them when you are not using them. And there are many ways to do it. You can use on Zoom, you can use PowerPoint as a virtual background, so that and then you can make yourself bigger, or you can use what I'm using right now, which is a little bit more of an advanced setup. Actually, if you want to share your slides exactly like I'm doing, you can get that at markuspresents.com/OBS. I'm using a free software called OBS to do all these slide sharing things. So there's a link to that in the below as well. And the cool thing about something like this is that I can not only put it here next to me, I can also put myself in the little corner there, or I can put the slide full screen as well, and then bring it back to camera only. So don't bore your audience with slides. Remove them when you're not using them. Listen, we're going to move over to some questions from you guys here in a little bit. But if you think this is valuable and you want to join the 3-day challenge, just go to markuspresents.com/challenge, and you will learn so much more about sounding great, looking great, and using visual aids in a really powerful way in that free challenge. And it's going to be on my YouTube channel, super accessible. If you can join the live streams, they're going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern on those days, but the replays will also be available. It's going to be fun. We're going to learn a lot. And as I mentioned, there's a secret, super interactive part in that as well that I encourage you to check out. Listen, we're going to do some questions from the audience, but actually, if you want to learn exactly how to share slides like I just did, you can use the link below. But I have a video about it on my channel as well. To check out that video, click or tap the screen right here to learn how to build this setup in OBS Studio. And for another video from my channel, click or tap the screen right here. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you in the next video.